Yeah. So I'm not disagreeing. Ab initio. I'm asking everybody to go back to first principles to understand what makes a country successful,
Right.
and then build an assessment of the chance of a country becoming successful. Or in the case of China, which everyone wants to be able to say is that it's the next, defining country, or for the rest of us. Okay, so there are many assumptions in that kind of thinking that don't hold to first principles. Okay, now if this was 1950, that's 5 years after World War II, and we were having this conversation, and we asked which are the most promising countries in Asia, we would have said Sri Lanka, okay, Ceylon at that time, Myanmar, Burma, and the Philippines. And the Philippines GDP was the same as Japan in 1950. Okay, and they were importing maids from China, in that period of time. And then what happened? Look at how the whole the whole idea got stood on its head. And these exactly the same three countries became basket cases almost, right? And then had to retrace their path and so on. So the thing is this: China is a successful country, and China is a country that has to be respected for what it's achieved. The first thing that we need to ask ourselves when we assess China is not to be enamored by the incredible success. I mean, it's awesome. I spent, during COVID, I was there for 2 years, and
Oh, wow.
I have had a business in China since 2020. That I'm there every month. Okay, and I'll be back there next week. So and I'm very familiar with the key people and so on. So now the thing is this: um, we need to first predicate what made China successful for what it is. And all of those reasons that people give, that it's an ancient civilization, that that it is actually smarter than the West and all that, that's not necessarily true. Okay, the China of today, if this was 1911 leading to 1918, when 17, when they overthrew the Qing Dynasty, the Chinese intellectuals were saying that we're not good enough. And what did they do? They threw out their dynastic system, and they then went on a 50-year journey looking for a political structure that could hold them together until they reached 1949, which was the start of the communist rule of China. And you don't label communism as being good or bad. That's the way it's turned out. So it's a form of government that is able to hold the country together, right? And then that government went through a lot of processes which were difficult, and dark periods before they reached where they are today, right? So and I've seen, by the way, the same phenomenon in Rwanda. Okay, Rwanda today looks like the Singapore of Africa. And then when I asked people in these countries what made the difference, their reply is because we saw the alternative. Okay, because we saw the alternative. If you met some of the economists who made the miraculous transition for China to come into the market economy, they met in a location called the Mogan Shan, which is Mogan Mountain. After the Cultural Revolution, and started constructing, and many of them were young, in their 30s at that time, and I know a couple of them. Mm-hmm. In fact, I know several of them, but a couple of them very close today, who were part of that process of trying to figure out what to do to make sure that China learns from the best economic theories of the world, and yet responds to it in a way that is sustainable for China, because Russia didn't do that. Russia embraced the Big Bang approach wholeheartedly, to its own detriment, right? So those are the parts that need to be put in place to construct the story to where it is today. Now, today, what the big question is, which countries are going to ace artificial intelligence and the knowledge economy, right? And the knowledge economy is is rending all of us asunder, meaning it's tearing apart entire countries and leading with the United States, right? Because the technology originates from the US, and the US has a liberal, clean sheet approach to how to deal with knowledge. Whereas every other country in the world has a curated approach. In other words, we still think that we are able to take bits and pieces of the knowledge economy and apply it to our countries, and then close ourselves off to things that we don't like, right? And then that's a function of the political system and how competent the state is. Now, when I assess a country, any country, I take 5 or 6 elements, or I call them institutions, and I stand them alongside each other, and I see the interaction between each of them. The state, okay, the significant individuals, the ultra high net worth, the multi-trillion billionaires like Jeff Bezos and Steve Jobs and so on. Okay, and then I look at the unions and how work is organized, and then I look at the individual, and I look at other institutions that are significant. So in some countries, they are the Catholic Church, for example, and so on, and how they interplay with each other. Now, very simply is this. The countries where the state is competent, okay, and China, the state wasn't competent 10 years ago, the state is becoming increasingly competent, stands against the country where the entrepreneur has the biggest sense of opportunities that he can build on, okay? And Singapore, for example, has a competent state, and therefore you don't have large businesses that are built from the ground up. I mean, Singapore imports Chinese billionaires. Those don't count, okay? And if you look at the stock market of Singapore today, the largest companies on the stock exchange are now the banks. And banks are bad because they are not real economy, and they are absorbing the entire profit pool of the country. And that's all that Singapore has left for itself. And Singapore gives the impression that it is very supportive of entrepreneurs, but the moment you become of a certain size, the state will absorb you. Okay, so like this, you go country by country to see that interrelationship. A state has to be competent to a certain measure, but not competent enough that it doesn't lean on entrepreneurs to build some of the large businesses. And then the relationship between large businesses, which is an institution category of its own, and the rest of the population. Now, if you take the United States, for example, in 1995, the large corporations in the US, starting with GE, had this standoff with the labor force, and they made it very clear to the labor force that if you don't keep wages down and we don't have the right to cull the lowest unproductive segments of the working force, we're going to take the jobs out to China and India, and we're going to keep your cost of labor as low as possible, right? Now, the thing is this, and today the US is paying for it. Wages haven't risen as high as inflation, and the whole, the communal structure of the labor force is in disarray, right? So you take all of these factors and put them alongside each other. Now, the biggest thing about the knowledge economy is this, that you need to embrace the effect of knowledge wholeheartedly. Now, anyone who tells me that China is the future AI, my argument against them is this: China banned Wikipedia. Okay. Now, if you, and I know Jimmy Wales, okay, and he can't say anything nice about China. He doesn't say anything, but right. He doesn't say anything nice about China, right? And they still try to interact with him to say, can you bring a form of Wikipedia into China that we can still use? So when you think about what's happening with ChatGPT, what do you think Robin Lee is doing? Robin Lee is looking at this whole monster of ChatGPT, and he can't respond fast enough because he needs to figure out how he can edit himself for the state, and so he has to second guess the state as he is embracing the technology. Take that into AI, right? Into the fullness of AI. So so don't tell me that it's a given that China is the future of AI. Okay, until it's able to embrace all of the effects of AI, and yes, there will be dysfunction in society and problems in structures and so on. Unless it allows itself to go through that process, it's not going to be a leader. Okay, the leadership will come from somewhere else. And the other thing about AI is that you need the ability to garner intelligence and knowledge and creativity from around the world. Okay, if you go into my blog, I gave a speech in Nanjing, okay, to the Nanjing government that the thing about the chip industry is that in the morning. Someone in Silicon Valley, a systems engineer or architect, starts his work. He passes it on to his colleagues in Japan, and then to Shanghai, and then to Singapore, and then to Belgium, and then to London, and back to the US. Okay, so the whole creative process of the chip industry swirls around the world every day. So a country like China has to figure out this idea of the supply chain of knowledge. And the thing is this, and I'm not saying all this to say one is better than the other. A zero-sum game approach to excellence and to breakthroughs in technology and knowledge is the wrong way to think about it. Okay, so anyone who starts by saying, well, all the knowledge is going to be created in China or India or the US is not thinking about it correctly. I mean. Take a average aircraft, the 777, 16 countries, and the Airbus A350, about the same, 15 to 20 different countries involved in different aspects of engineering to make a complex technology possible. So today we're talking about the complexity of the technology, as well as capital that is put in to make ideas a reality. China has benefited from the global capital that it access to, but now that and people don't realize that global capital is finite. Today, you can't get valuations like you used to in China because global capital has started moving elsewhere. And suddenly in Southeast Asia, a company called Grab is able to do a $40 billion spec, which is bigger than any of the stock markets in Southeast Asia, because global capital, has thrown its cards down to support something from Southeast Asia, and eventually Africa will benefit too. And in India, which used to have only like 10 fintech unicorns, today I hear that they have about 100. Okay, so suddenly India looks interesting. So capital and knowledge, these two elements are redefining which will be the winning countries or the winning nation states or winning communities, right, of the future.